Hi all, welcome to the complete JavaScript beginners tutorial by CodAffection. In this session, we will discuss JavaScript strings. This is a dedicated session for JavaScript strings, so we could discuss everything in depth, like what is a string, different ways to generate a string, and methods or functions related to them. As per the definition, string is a sequence of characters enclosed within a pair of quotes. Let's check that in action. Start with a variable declaration, full name. You can either use single quotes or double quotes also. So here we go. In between these quotes, you can throw any character you want. You could use either single quotes or double quotes like this. Both are same. Now let's declare another variable, street address. Into it, I will pass this address here. Now you could see a red squiggly line here indicating an error, because inside this value itself we have a single quotes. So this is what JavaScript interprets. This is a string and rest of these parts are written by mistake. In these situations, instead of enclosing this string with a single quotes, you could use a double quotes. Now we don't have any issue. Now instead of this single quotes here, suppose you have a double quotes in between, then also we have this error. Now to avoid this error, we can wrap this string with single quotes. Now this is how we handle when we have quotes within the string itself. Now let me declare another variable, address. Into it, I will save this whole address. See, the whole address is written within a single line here. Instead of this, we have a better way to do this. Now I'm gonna reassign the same address into this variable using template string. Now let me copy paste the same here. Instead of these double quotes or single quotes, we'll be using backticks. You could see this character in your keyboard on top left corner along with escape key. So here we have enclosed everything within backticks like this. In template strings, we could split a string into multiple lines like this so that we could easily understand it. So using template strings, we can split the string into multiple lines like this, and it is much easier to read than from this single line here. And also we don't have to worry about these quotes within the string itself. So here I will rename this variable as address1 and this will be address2. Now let's print these values into developer console here. So address1, let's duplicate this for address2. So here we have the same address stored in different methods. This string template is saved as we have provided here. The same new lines is there in the saved version also. Now, the important benefit of using template string is that it allows placeholders within a string. Let me show you that with a real-world example here. This is a screenshot of MailChimp website dashboard. Here, you could see the greetings message, good morning, Marijana. Now say for a different user, Alex, this greetings message should be, good morning, Alex. In order to generate such string, template string would be helpful. Let's check that in action. Let's declare a new variable, greeting message. Now let's assign the message here, good morning. Now instead of hard coding this name here, we'll be using string interpolation. For that, we could do this $, then a pair of curly braces. Within that, we can provide this variable name, full name here. Instead of this single quotes, it should be backtick. So here we have the template string. Inside that we can pass a placeholder like this. During runtime, this placeholder will be replaced with the value inside this variable full name here. So this is what we call a placeholder, and this way of generating a string is called as string interpolation. Now after the placeholder, we can pass anything we want. Just before this portion here, the value of full name will be replaced here. Now instead of this random string, we need an exclamation mark like this. Let's print this variable into the developer console. So greeting message, boom, that's it. Good morning, John Smith. So this placeholder is replaced with the value that we have within this variable. So this is what we call a string interpolation. The placeholder will be replaced with the value of the expression within it. In this case, we have a full name variable, so the value of full name will be replaced in place of this. In between this, we could write any JavaScript expression. We have already explained what is an expression in previous session. So anything that returns a value is an expression. If you want to do some mathematical operation in between these curly brackets, it's possible because it is an expression. So we can pass any expression in between these pair of brackets and the value will be replaced at runtime. In this MailChimp website, once user login into the website, corresponding username Marijana will be saved into a variable like this. For now, let's replace this with Marijana. So there will be a variable similar to this full name. Once user login into the website, corresponding username will be assigned to this variable and that name will be replaced in place of this placeholder here. And that's how we can generate dynamic strings like this. You got it? I know it can't be always good morning. Based on current time, we could program like good morning, good afternoon, etc. with another variable like this full name here. We'll be discussing JavaScript date and time in a separate session so that you can handle these types of requirements. As you can see, these template strings are like a template. We could dynamically replace or modify the string during runtime. This way of generating string values are called as string interpolation. Now there is one more way to create a string. To show you that, let me create another variable here, message. Now to generate this string, we could use this function string. It is a standard or a default function in JavaScript. Inside that, we could pass the string. So here we have used datatype function string. So these types of datatype function is available for all data type like number, boolean, begin, object, etc. Out of which we have already used begin function for creating begin variables in datatype session. For example, if you want to assign a number to this variable, you could use the datatype function number. Inside that we can pass the value. So for all data types, there is a standard function for generating value of its type. For example, you can generate an object with its type function. So it looks like this object. Inside that we can pass the object directly. Finally, let's log this variable object. See, here we have the object that we have created with its data type function object. So these types of function is available for all data types. So just keep that in mind. There is nothing special to the values that we have created with a data type or through direct assignment here. Most of the time we'll be using single quotes or double quotes. If there is a requirement for string interpolation, we'll be using template strings like this. Now let's discuss another scenario. We have already mentioned that if there is a quote within the string itself, we have to use the alternative quotes to wrap them. For example, here we have a double quotes. To wrap this string, we have used single quotes. Here we have a single quotes. To enclose this string, we have used a double quotes. In these situations, you can also insist on using a particular type of quotes to wrap this string. For example, let me copy this variable declaration here and let's paste that here. Now you could see this error, the variable has already been declared. We have already discussed that let variables does not allow duplicate variable names. So I will just rename this as street address 2. So here we have a single quotes and we also used a pair of single quotes to wrap this string. Here we have this error because the single quotes already has a meaning that it is treated as an indication for starting or ending a string. In order to consider this character as a part of this string here, just before the character we just need to add this backslash like this. Now the special meaning of the single character is ignored and it became a part of this text here. Now let's print this variable here, street address 2. See, here we have this string. The forward slash that we have provided is ignored. In place of this backward slash single quotes, we only have a single quotes here. Normally in a string, everything in between the quotes is treated as a plain text. But with these types of sequences, we can accomplish certain operations within the string itself. So here we have the complete list of escape sequences in JavaScript. I have given the link in video description. All of these escape sequences starts with a backward slash. We have already discussed escape sequence for single quotes. Now back to the application here. Normally JavaScript engine treats single quotes or double quotes as an indication for starting or ending a string. In order to escape from normal behavior, we are using a backward slash. And that's why these types of sequences are called as escape sequences. Now there is an escape sequence for double quotes also in this string. Instead of this single quotes, if you want to have a double quotes, you could do this. We don't need an escape sequence here because we are wrapping this string with single quotes. Instead of that, let's try double quotes. Now we have to escape this double quotes. For that, you could use backward slash like this. Now instead of these quotes here, you actually want to show a backward slash itself. In that case, we'll be doing this. But this won't work. As you can see here, we don't have a backward slash here. It's because when JavaScript finds a backward slash, it expects a special character. So in order to escape from its default behavior, you could use this backward slash here. Now you could see the backslash here. So just go through this list of escape sequences so that you could refer this table later when you have such a requirement in future. Now let's discuss one of the common escape sequence, which is new line. For that, I will be copying this address variable from here and let's paste that here. I will rename this variable as address3. Let's print the value here. In order to split the same string into multiple lines, we have used template strings here. You could do the same using new line escape sequence here. So after this name, we need a new line. So backward slash n. So here we have a new line. See, let me add rest of the new line character here. So this new line escape sequence can be used to put line breaks in between the string. Now instead of this new line sequence, if you use this sequence, we can have a tab in between the string. Let's try that here. See, instead of a new line, we have a tab in between the string. So that's how escape sequence works. Now let me show you a small tip here. This enter variable declaration is done within this line 18. If you want to split this return string into multiple lines for better readability like we have done within this string template, you could do this. Normally, string declared with quotes does not allow to split them into multiple lines. That's why we have this red squiggly line here. In order to avoid this problem, just use backward slash just before the line break. While printing the value, we can't see the new line. When you have a long string, you can split them into multiple lines like this for better readability. While saving the value, line breaks or new line won't be there inside the string. Isn't that cool? So that's all about different ways to generate a string. Now let me get rid of these sample codes here. Now we are going to discuss string concatenation operator. So through concatenation, we can append or merge multiple strings into one string. For example, let me declare two variables here, first name, the last name. Now here we have the variable full name. We can combine this first name and last name here. For that, we will do the concatenation like this, first name, and here we have the concatenation operator plus operator, then last name. Let's print the value here. So here we have used plus operator to concat these two variables here, and here we have the concatenation result. To have a separation between first name and last name, we can have this space string like this. So here we have the space string, and let's combine them in this order. So here we have combined these three strings. Let's try one more example here. Let me declare one more variable, place. Into it I will assign this value Florida. Now let's print a message like this. Today's. Here we need a single quotes or apostrophe. For that we will use the escape sequence like this. Today's guest is, let me concat the full name here. Into it we will concat this from, and let's append the place here. So here we have the final output as a result of the concatenation here. In previous session we have learned compound assignments. Let's try that for this concatenation plus operator. Suppose we have a variable sample text, and let's initialize that with 1, 2, 3. Now let's append few more numbers into this string here. So we could do this sample text plus 5, 6, 7. Let's print the value into the developer console. So here we have the output. Since we have same variable on both sides of this assignment here, we could use compound assignment. So let me duplicate this line here, and let's comment this first line, and let's use this compound assignment. The operation is working as we expected. You might have already noticed the same plus operator is used to add two numbers. So based on the adjacent operand type, JavaScript determines whether we need an addition operation or a concatenation. If both of them are string, then there will be a concatenation. If both of them are numbers, then addition will happen. Now what happens when we do this operation by mixing the type? I will try that inside this log statement here. Let's try to do the operation with this number 3 and this string good. See, here we have the output. So here we have a concatenation. If the printed value is a number, then the printed color will be different. See, here we have this number in a string, so they are in white color. This is in pink color, meaning this is a number type. So from the color itself, we could say it's not a number. So in this plus operation here, this number is converted into corresponding string and then appended with this string here. Why it's not the other way? That would be converting the string into a number. It's too difficult to convert a string into a number than a number is getting converted into a string. So that's what happens here. JavaScript always looks for the easy way. Now let me duplicate this. What will be the output of this operation here? See, here we have the output 7 good. How does that happen? If both these numbers are converted to string, then the output will be 4 3 good. Instead of that, here we have 7 good. It can be explained with operator associativity. For plus operator, associativity is from left to right. So first of all, this addition operation happens. So 7, and then we have this plus operator in between 7 and good. So the 7 is converted to string and then the concatenation is happened. So that's why we have this final output here. So this is what happens when we have a plus operator in between number and string. Now instead of this number, let's pass a boolean value true. See, this boolean is converted to a string and it is concatenated with this string here. Now if you are thinking about doing other arithmetic operators like multiplication or division, we will end up in this output NaN, meaning not a number. This multiplication operator can only be used for arithmetic operations between number type or big int. It can't be used with a string. It will end up in this value NaN, meaning not a number. So there is only one common operator between number type and string, which is this plus operator. In case of a string, it will do the concatenation, and in case of number type, it will do the addition. So that's all about string concatenation. Now let me get rid of these code snippets here. Now let's look how to find number of characters in a string. To find number of characters inside this string, we could do this. Name dot length. It prints 5, meaning there are 5 characters inside this string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we have used length property of a string object. Did I say object? Yes, this is a property of string object. If you remember, string is a primitive data type. As per the definition, primitive types are they or not derived from anything else. They are simple as this string here. They don't have a property like this length. Then from where this property length is coming from. To clarify this doubt, let me declare another variable place. Let's initialize that with the data type function string. Into it we will pass Sydney. Now if you check the data type of this variable, you could see it is string. Now let's consider this variable here, country. To initialize this variable, I will do this new string. Inside that we can pass this. Now if you check the type of this variable, you could see it is an object. See? The only difference in between these variables is that we have used a new keyword. We will discuss about new keyword along with JavaScript class. For now, just understand this. This string is a class and this is a function. So this function returns the string that we have passed and it is assigned to this variable here. And this string is a class. So inside this string class, we have various properties and functions related to string. So those properties or functions will be there inside the object that is created through this new keyword here. So this is a string object. This country is a string object. It contains various properties. You could see that. Let's first of all let's log this variable here, place, and let's log this object country. See, while we print the value of this variable place, we could only see the value, the same is passed here. So this string is similar to the string that we have created through single quotation or string templates, etc. All of them comes under primitive strings. But when you print a string object, see here we have the string object. We have briefly explained what is an object during data type session. Inside that we have various properties. 1, 2, 3, these are properties actually, and here we have the property length. That is what we have used here. If you expand this prototype here, you could see various functions related to string. We'll be discussing that in a bit. So here we have declared the variable name using primitive string. But we are able to access the length property like this name is a string object. But actually it's not a string object, it is a primitive string. Then how it is possible? Actually it is done by JavaScript itself. Whenever we try to access these properties or execute these functions on a primitive string like this one here, behind the scene JavaScript convert primitive string to corresponding string object for that particular expression or statement. Not literally changing the primitive to an object, it will create a temporary string object corresponding to the string primitive and then access the property or execute functions within it. The same thing happens for other data types also. Now finally, we have to get familiar with commonly used string functions in JavaScript. For that, let me get rid of these sample codes here. So first of all, we will start with the function for concatenation. For that, I will be declaring a variable greetings. Let's initialize that with hello. We have already discussed how to concat or merge strings with plus operator. Along with the plus operator, we have a string function for doing that. Let me try that within this log function here. So here we have the variable greetings. From that, we can call this function concat. Inside this function, we could pass strings like this. So this function returns the result after concatenating these two strings hello and the. So here we have the result hello the. Like this string, you could pass any number of strings within this function here. All of them will be concatenated like this. So that's how this concat function append or merge strings like we have done with plus operator. To concat two strings, you could either use plus operator or this concat function for combining two strings. It's your choice. Now let's talk about accessing characters within a string. For that, we'll be using index number. It's like an ordinal number, but it is starting from 0. So this first character is at 0th index, and this E is having index 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and so on. Now to access a character for a given index, we have a function called char at. Let's try that here. Greetings. Then let's call this function char at. If we pass 0, it will return the character at 0th index. So that will be this capital H here. If we pass 1, it will return the character at index 1. Then let's try 2. So for 2 and 3, we'll be having letter L, and then at 4th index, we have O. So that's how this char at function works. Now there is one more way to access a character within a string. For that, we are not using any function. We have a pair of square brackets like this. Inside that, we can pass the index. This is also similar to this char at function. Here also it returns the character at the given index here. If you already know arrays, you should know this syntax is similar to accessing elements within an array. Most of you might have heard of arrays before. If not, don't worry, we will discuss that in a separate session. So most often, this syntax is used to access or retrieve characters within a string rather than this char at function here. Now there is a similar function to this char at function which is known as char code at. It will return Unicode number of a character. We have briefly explained what is Unicode number stands for while discussing identifiers in JavaScript. Everything in JavaScript is stored in binary representation. We could directly convert decimal numbers into a binary easily. But for characters in a string, first of all, we have to map those characters into a number, and then only we can convert that into a string. For that, we have Unicode representation. In it, each letter or character is associated with a number. For example, capital letter A has 65 Unicode number, for B it is 66, and so on. For capital Z, Unicode number is 90. Not only for English letters, it could represent letters in most of the languages across the world. We have already seen that in our identifier session. This function is rarely used in a practical project unless if you have a special requirement. Though this function would be helpful to solve certain exercises that you might have to deal with during interview practical session. For example, if I want to find the Unicode number of capital H, I could do this. Greetings dot char code at. Inside this function we can pass the index. So here we have the Unicode number of capital H here. In same way you could find the Unicode numbers of rest of the characters inside this string here. Unicode number of small letter e is 101. Now let me duplicate this line here. If you want to find Unicode number of capital A, you could do this. Here we have a string with capital A, and let's call the function char code at. Inside that you could pass the index 0. So here we have the Unicode number of capital A. Unicode number of capital B is 66. Then 67 for C, so on. By default, this function looks for the index 0. So it's not necessary to pass 0 here. If there is no value passed inside this function, it will look for the 0th index. So remember this function char code at. It might be helpful to solve certain exercises in interview practical sessions. So these are the most commonly used string functions in JavaScript. For better understanding, I have split these functions into two categories: functions for inspection and functions for modification. So these modification functions returns the result with some modifications inside the string, and these functions under inspection will search or match or retrieve characters or strings within the string. They does not modify the string. Out of this we have already discussed concatenation function concat and the functions for character access like char code and char code at. Now let's discuss rest of the functions under inspection. For that I will be declaring a variable here, sentence, and I will initialize this variable with this string. Now rest of the string functions will be demonstrated with this variable sentence. First of all, we have these functions starts with and end with. Without further explanation, let me show you how these functions works. Let's call the function from this variable sentence starts with. Inside the function we can pass a string like this. As this function name suggests, this function checks whether this string is starting with this string here. If it is starting with the provided string here, it will return true, otherwise it will return false. Here we have passed she, but it returns false because JavaScript is case sensitive. Instead of small letter s, if you pass capital S, it will return true. See, she was young. So it is starting with this provided string here. If there is a typo, it won't work. The exact reverse comparison is done with this function ends with. Let's call that here. Of course, it will return false because this string is not ending with this string here. Instead of this, if you pass young, it should return true. So this function checks whether this string is ending with the provided string here. So these functions are comparison functions just to check whether the given string is starting or ending with a given sequence. So this function always returns Boolean value true or false. Now let's discuss next two functions, index of and last index of. It doesn't need an explanation. I will just start with an example here. So let's call the function index of from this sentence variable. So inside this function we can pass a string like this, and it will return the index of first match. So in this case, this was string is there at this place. So let's check the index. S is having the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why this function returns 4, because this string was is starting at the index 4. Now what I meant by first matching index. Inside this string, this word young is repeated thrice. If you run this function with the word young, it will return the first match, that means the index of this word here. If you want to find the index of last match here, instead of index of function, you could call the function last index of. So let's try that here, last index of. Now it returns the value 48. To verify the starting index of this word here, we don't need to count the index from start. Instead, we can check the length of the string like this. So sentence dot length. So the total length of this string is 53. So the index of last character will be always less than 1 unit than that of this length here. So this character is having the index 52, so 51, 50, 49, 48. So that's what we have the output from this last index here. Now let me remove this length statement here. Hi guys, sorry to interrupt. I'm coming from future. I forgot to explain the function include. So let me explain the function includes here. So here we have the console log function. From this sentence variable, we can call the function includes. So basically this function will look for a substring within this string here. If that particular substring is present within this string, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. That's all. So let's check whether this substring young is inside this string. So here we have the output from the function, means this word is present inside this string here. Now let me try a different word. This word is not present within this string, so it will return false here. So this function includes always returns boolean value true or false based on whether the substring is present within the string. So that's all about the function includes. Now you can continue with the rest of the functions. Now under this inspection category, we have two more functions, search and match. We'll be discussing that after these modifications functions. Now let's talk about repeat function. Without further explanation, let's try the function here. So I have a string, within it we have a period symbol. In order to repeat this string, we can call this function repeat. Inside the function, we can specify the number of times that we want to repeat this string. So this string is repeated thrice here. Another example would be, let me duplicate this line here, and here we have a good example, blah 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 blah. Okay, so that's all about repeat function. Now let's discuss these functions, replace and replace all. Let's try the function here. Inside this string here, I want to replace this word she with he. For that, we could call the function replace. Into this function, first of all, we want to pass the string that we want to replace. So I will pass she here, and we want to replace that with he. So here we have the output, he was young the way an actual young person is young. Now there is a limitation for this function, replace function. It will only replace the first match. For example, if I want to replace this young with old, we could do this. Let's replace young with old. See, this replace function only replaces the first match here, and rest of the young are not replaced here. In order to do this, we can call this function replace all. So here we have the output, she was old the way an actual old person is old. So in this return string, all the occurrence of young is replaced with old. Now let's talk about the functions substring and slice. Like the name suggests, these functions returns a portion of the string. Let's try that here. Let's call the function substring. So this substring function is used to retrieve a part of the string. So into this function, we need to pass start index and end index. If I pass 0 here, it will return the complete string. If I pass 1 here, the substring will start from this first index character. Let's replace that with 2. So it is starting with E and so on. So as we increment this number, the starting index is moving forward. So the substring will start from the given index here. And you can also provide a number for end index. Let's try 10 here. The substring will end just before this given index here. So the substring will start from 4 and end at 9. So the substring starts with this W, then 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So just before this given index, it will stop the substring. So that's what we can see here. This is exactly what this slice function does. Let me duplicate this line here. Instead of this substring function, let's call slice. Though there are few differences between these functions, substring and slice. If this start index is greater than the end index, then this function will swap those two numbers, meaning it is same as calling this function in this order 4, 10. That's why we have the same result as before. Now if we do the same for this slice function here, it will return an empty string. So there are only few differences in these rare situations. There are one or two more differences between these functions. I have given a Stack Overflow link in video description. There you could see rest of the differences between these functions. Now let's talk about this function split. This function is used to split a string with a given substring. Let's say I want to split this string with these spaces here. So we can call this function split. Inside that, let's pass the space. That's it. The entire string is split with the space. This string is split into multiple strings like she, was, young, etc. So this is what we call an array. It's a collection of multiple elements wrapped within a pair of square brackets like this. We will be discussing JavaScript array in a future session. So this function split the string with the given substring, and the result will be in the form of an array. Let's try to split this string with this word young. So the first split is happened here, she was, and then this young is used for the split operation. And then after that, the way and actual is the another string, and here we have the final split. After this last young, we don't have anything else, so that's why we have an empty string left here. So that's how a split function works. This function will make more sense once you learn JavaScript arrays. For now, let's move to the next functions. These two functions are self-explanatory. Let's try that here. So the first function, to lowercase, convert each of the characters inside the string into lowercase. Here, the string is started with the capital S, but here we have small s. The exact reverse operation happens when we call this function to uppercase. Every character inside this string will be uppercased. So that's all about those two functions. Now we have this function trim, then trim start, then trim end. These functions are used to skip or ignore white spaces before a string or after a string. Let's try to call these functions here. So I have called the function trim here. Let's duplicate this twice. Here I will call the function trim start, and finally I will call this trim end function. Here you can't see the difference because we don't have any white space in the beginning or at the end of this string. Let's add some white spaces here. Now you could see the difference. This trim function will remove white space from both ends. So that is what this function returns here. We have white spaces in the beginning and in the end. Trim start function will remove the white space from the starting but not at the end. And the reverse is happening for this function. It will only remove the white space at the end, not from beginning. Now, to give you a practical situation where this trim function would be helpful in a data entry application, before saving the data entered through the form, it would be better to remove the white spaces from both of the ends. We have already discussed that primitive data types are immutable, so the string. So that's the reason these functions does not modify the original string. Instead, they returns the modified string as a new string. Now let's talk about functions involving regular expression, search and match. They comes under functions for inspection. These two functions only accept regular expression. So to discuss this function, regular expression is a prerequisite. Unfortunately, we can't discuss regular expression in this session. I will discuss that in a different video. Once I do that, I will give the link in video description and inside the video icon. For now, let's briefly explain what is a regular expression. Regular expression is a sequence of characters that specifies a search pattern. Consider situations where we can't look for a fixed value. For example, we have a long string. From that long string, we want to return all of the email addresses. In this situation, we can't look for a fixed value. Instead, we can look for the words with the pattern. There are few characters before the @ symbol, then few characters, then period followed by few characters like that. So this is the pattern of a valid email address. So using regular expression, we can define such patterns and we can match and search for such patterns in a string. So there will be a lot of situations where regular expressions are super helpful. For now, let me explain these two functions with simple regular expression. So let's discuss these two functions, match and search. And let's call the function here. First of all, we'll call this function match. Inside that, we have to pass a regular expression. Regular expressions are expressed within a pair of forward slashes like this. At the end, we'll be passing tokens like this. So here we have the global token, which means we want to match the entire string from start to end. And in between these forward slashes, we can provide the regular expression. Suppose we want to return all of the capital letters, then the regular expression will be like this. Capital A to capital Z. So it will look for the capital letters from A to Z, and here is the result. It returns an array matching this expression here. Inside the string, we only have one capital letter, which is this capital S here. Now let's try one more example. For that, let me duplicate this line. This time I want to have words starting with W. So here we have the corresponding regular expression. So these are the two words starting with W, was and way. So this match function will return the substring which matches this regular expression pattern here. Now let me duplicate this line for search function. I will use the same regular expression instead of this function. Instead of the match function, I will call search. Instead of returning the exact words, this search function will return the index of the first match for this regular expression pattern. If there is no match found, the search function returns -1. So that's all about these two functions, match and search. So that's all for this session. You could find the notes with theory and code snippets in my note-taking project, which is a GitHub repository. I have given the link in video description. In next session, we'll be discussing few more points regarding number data type. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to this channel. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues. See you in next session.